Welcome to Mind Beyond the Mission, a podcast for and by veterans and veteran family members. I'm one of your hosts, Brian McKenna, and I'm a strategic advisor at the Atlas Institute and a retired Canadian soldier.
And I'm Laryssa Lamrock, strategic advisor at the Atlas Institute and a proud military family member. In this podcast, we'll be diving into real issues experienced by veterans, former RCMP members, and their families.
We won't promise you that we'll do everything perfectly, but we can assure you that we'll be getting real about the experiences that so many of us have in common, but don't always talk about, or don't necessarily know where or how to talk about it.
We hope you'll find solidarity in our words and experiences, and most importantly, that you'll find a sense of hope that things can truly get better. You can live present in the moment and live life authentically.
Let's get into it. And we're back on another episode of Mind Beyond the Mission. We're actually here on site again at Ottawa, which is kind of nice. You know, it's good with the tech world, and we're using a little bit of it today with our guest that's joining us. But it's actually it's nice to see you. Nice to be doing this again. Joined here as usual with Laryssa. And, you know, we've got a reoccurring guest coming back here. We're going to be joined today by Mr. Ryan Carey. So for folks that have not met Ryan before, very interesting guy, served in the Canadian Forces, lots of honorable service there. And we're going to be getting into that. But we're also going to look at the other side of what he knows about the brain. And he knows a little bit about it because also, along with his service in the Canadian Forces, he's been a player in the CFL, and we've actually utilized him very recently to come and do an art session with us. So the artist, veteran, and football player, Ryan Carey, joining us today to talk about brains.
Well, we all wear many hats, don't we? There you go.
Yeah, we wanted to get a little deeper into what's actually going on physically in our brains. And it's not because we want to bypass the mental health side. In fact, we want to come alongside the mental health discussion and have a little bit more discussions along with it about what's physically going on to that organ in our head. And, you know, you look at the world of military operations, a vehicle rollover can give you an impact from the side that your body wasn't expecting. You could be around overpressure. You could obviously be the victim of a very, very catastrophic explosion. But there's also, you know, 15 years of pugil stick fighting. There's just jumping out of the back of vehicles with a clunky helmet pounding you in the head. You listen to the explanation of a parachutist as to what goes on with like their body, and they'll tell you heels, back, pelvis, knees. But sometimes they miss out what's going on in their head, what's going on in the brain.
And I'll also say I've heard stories. I wasn't in the Navy, but being on ship and being strapped in and being tossed all over the place. I've certainly been around a lot of aircraft. What's happening to our pilots? I mean, we don't know, but we do know that the focus right now in the world should be that repetitive blows to the head, that these small repetitive blows to the head or repetitive energy entering the brain, however the smart people want to call it, that it's an assault on the brain. And it's been shown, it's been proven in I think, pretty straightforward science that this is a problem that we should be looking at in all areas of life. It's that important. We believe it's endemic. What's interesting is I thought there was no hope 2 or 3 years ago. And I can tell you, going to this SIMFR conference and seeing the good work that everybody's doing and the level of care that people are putting into veterans as a whole was very heartwarming. It was very good spiritually for me to be there to go, wow, there's some people working on this, because we've been saying this for years, and it's just, the world is also full of a lot of information, right? So it's not like we're right. I think a lot of people have been right about this. And I'll share something vulnerable. My mom, as you know, my father served in the Vietnam War. He did 2 tours, and my mom said over 40 years ago, she's like, there's some brain damage here. So she knew, she was studying to be a nurse, and And so I think this has been going on also for a long, long time. And I would say we're at the stages of studying it where it's fairly clear to me. And Ken Dryden, God bless his soul, he was like, the time for advocacy is over. Like, we need to act. We need to take action on this, and get on with it. And you know what? I see people out there doing that. I'm coaching football now. I see that. I see the change. I see the effort in the Canadian Armed Forces. It's been very, very easy dealing with the Canadian Armed Forces. Like, they're implementing things. When we sat and had hours of conversations with them at Sinver, we've been online with them. The collaboration's incredible. Some sporting agencies seem to think that, it's no big deal. Well, are eventually they going to be liable? Because I think the science is eventually, I mean, it's at the point where when doctors are saying smoking, maybe this isn't good, we should maybe look at this, but there was no science to back it up. So then the fight to prove that it was, I think it's a similar fight with brain injury. But certainly if you join the military, and I believe that every single soldier deserves to have a much more robust medical release that assumes that they probably hit their head a lot in service.
I have 8 questions coming out of there, Ryan. Thank you for that. I think I just want to give folks a little bit of context. You've mentioned Sinver a couple of times, and here's an acronym that actually most military members probably aren't familiar with. So all 3 of us have attended this week. What brings Brian and I to town particularly is the Sinver Research Conference. Sinver is Canadian Institute for Military and Veteran Health Research. And many veterans and military members don't realize that there is this, it's like an international conference. There's 800 attendees this year focused on military, veteran, and family health research, which I think is pretty encouraging and covering everything from, from traumatic brain injury and brain health to, I can't even list all the things. So if people are interested, they can have a look more. But I also wanted to say, I think it was pretty astute of your mom, Ryan, to talk about the fact with her nursing background that there was a brain injury there. I think the default for a lot of us, because the conversations around PTSD are so prevalent, that people think if there's an issue, they automatically default to, okay, well, there's short-term memory loss or there's changes in behavior or whatever. It must be PTSD. And I think they're missing the boat, as you're saying, on taking that step back and the more fulsome kind of assessment and consideration that maybe it's a physical brain injury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things I've noticed the last couple of days, I'm certainly not a doctor. Everyone around me knows that. So I can't really assess for you where the science is at. But what I can tell you is going to conferences that used to have very little discussion of that organ in our head as a physical organ, as what's going on. And how is brain injury impacting us? I used to not see it, and it used to really get under my skin. But what I can tell people out there in our community is folks are on the file now, right? Yeah. I can't give you a more in-depth assessment of where it's at because, quite frankly, when you're doing science properly, you look to see what's going on. You don't figure out what you think's going on and then look backwards to try find the evidence for your position, which was an interesting thing that was brought up to us at this conference. But I look at the schedule, I look at the talent that's in the room. I'm also really happy to see the Canadian medical system and the Canadian Forces medical system doing beg, borrow, and steal, man. Like if the Kiwis and the British are doing something better than us, let's learn that.
Yeah.
I don't like misplaced patriotism.
There's no time to reinvent the wheel. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We don't need to do that.
Yeah.
If they're ahead of us, let's hop on board.
Yeah, we have to. And I think veterans can bring that to the forefront, saying, hey, you're asking us to go cooperate with them in very extreme situations. Let's keep doing that. We make good bonds. We make good friendships in those environments.
Well, isn't that the point though, right? Like I look back in my history, there's a British, Australian, and American soldier in the same vehicle with me.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody's different. But at the same day, if that vehicle gets smacked, we're all in there together. I don't need a Canadian plan. I need the one that works.
That's right. Yeah. There's only one problem at that point in your life. Yeah.
I actually want to throw something back to Laryssa here. It actually goes to a conversation we had last night, which is how much memory and brain injury are linked. And, perhaps it comes across to some of the people in our life that we're ignoring them, or that thing that they reminded us of 2 or 3 times, it ought to register in the really matters part of our brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for some reason, it doesn't. And she started telling a story last night, and I could remind her of what she ate at that dinner 3 years ago and who was sitting across from who. Could I remember, exactly what session I was going to first thing this morning? What room I'm presenting
yeah,
in?
bro. Yeah,
Could I remember my pass?
Yeah.
And I actually left the room almost forgetting my room key. Had to jam the foot back in the door. It's like, what do you make sense of that? As like, you can pull this thing out from deep dark back. Remember what color someone's socks were, but not what someone that matters to be said yesterday.
Well, I think really what's happening there is it's a combination of things, right? It's sure, there is you've probably, I get the same thing, and obviously experience a lot of head trauma, and so I think some executive functioning might be compromised, but at the same time, the brain's incredibly neuroplastic. It can adjust, it can make changes. And we see that when you try to make yourself as physically healthy as possible, it creates better blood flow to the brain. It gives the brain better chemicals to work from, because you're ingesting the right food, because it gets its neurochemistry, it gets its positive hormones come from the stomach. They're called neurotransmitters. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just learning this from doctors, right? And this is part of Operation Brain Health, which we have under Project Enlist, is talking about how the importance of physical health in that. Now, if your physical health is compromised, some people have health issues. One of the things that they report right away is a foggy brain. It's because they're not getting that, and yeah. So I think that there's a combination of things that are going on there. That's why I believe it's super important to make the brain healthy, especially if you've experienced trauma, because I think it makes sense. A healthier brain is going to allow you the space to be able to go in and face the traumas that many veterans face. Many veterans face not only in war, but let's face it, a lot of people that join the military, I'm not sure what the percentages are. They come from rough backgrounds, or they come from a military background where this is just kind of the norm, rough. And maybe they have to think deeper and go back to their childhood and go, what was going on there? Maybe they have to, and in order to do that, you need to be healthy, right? Like that's a war you got to fight. You got to go back to some uncomfortable places. And I think you need to be physically healthy. I mean, I've sat in sessions where I've gone back to some of those places, and after it felt like I had a 500-pound rucksack on my back. And I recognized that it was just really, really low energy. And what did I do? I didn't have the energy to do anything, but I went out for a long walk and it cleared it.
Yeah. You and I have talked a little bit about brain health kind of in general, and I think that could be applicable to traumatic brain injury or PTSD or any of that. And you've talked certainly about the physical component, and it looks like you've done a lot of work, Ryan, to maintain and improve your own brain health. And just in the time I'm getting to know you, you do that in a number of different ways, and certainly the physical piece of it. But I'd really like to learn what are other kind of components of that brain health. And I'm curious to see where you're going to go with that, because I have an assumption about something that you shared with us the other night. But yeah, so what are the other components for you with maintaining your own brain health?
Well, for me, it's actually lowering the bar.
Okay, how do you mean?
There's times in life where you experience a little more stress. This week for me is one of those weeks. So I had to drive to Montreal, drive from Montreal to Ottawa for Simfer. Great. Had to come back here. I had to teach a class yesterday. Tomorrow I'm heading to Toronto, long bus ride, coaching the football game, back late Friday night. That's enough stress. So I'm taking a break from the gym and I'm walking because I don't want to put my body under more stress. I'm trying to relax a bit more because the stress is out there. So what am I doing? I'm doing breath work. I'm meditating. I'm spending as much time as I can with things that are important, my family. I have my music to go to. This is all of it. I mean, it's understanding that, yes, you need to move. Yes, you need to eat well. Yes, you need to do things that are healthy for your brain, like walking. But there's also other really small things that you can do and you can use as tools when those ruminating thoughts show up, or when you just feeling off. And I think there's times when you need to sit with that, and there's times when it's just physical and you need to just do something so you can stop feeling like that. And I think people experience that no matter how, like, medication doesn't always solve that. That's just something you're going to have to eventually learn to deal with, because you have an injury. You probably have a brain injury. You've probably been diagnosed with some type of stress injury, and understand that that's normal. And having a stress injury is that you're going to have periods of anxiety and periods maybe where you're sliding into depression. But here's the difference. If you work on all those things, you can feel them coming on. You know, that you can feel anxiety coming on if you know what it feels like, because it normally anxiety starts in the body. Is that coming from brain injury? Is that coming? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just understand that it starts physically, and that's why breath work is important, because breath work will teach you to get that under control.
So for me, one of the things that happens is when I know that I'm mentally stressed, and normally from an anxiety side, first place I feel it's in my neck. Like I feel my neck's getting larger.
Yeah.
And I actually have stood in front of the mirror when I've sensed this coming on, and it actually seems like it's puffing out, and I'm certainly getting red. And that's where I now, by now I mean dealing with this for 15 years, that's where I know that I've actually crossed the line, right? More than likely, my guts were telling me a little while ago, but I wasn't listening.
The body keeps the score.
Or I was just pretending.
Yeah.
Oh, does it ever? It keeps the score, and
Yeah.
it reminds you that you lost the other day.
That's
too.
a really good book by Dr. Vanderkloog, just to throw out there. If you put notes in the pot, like the body keeps the score is a fantastic book that talks about this. So
it's one of the first ones that was referred to me. But the point I wanted to throw your way is like, okay, that's the anxiety. When I know I've got when my whole system is having issues with brain injury, what's happening is you start to get a green haze, almost like looking through colored glass, and just kind of like in the center of my vision. So now I'm at a point where I can tell the difference. How do those things present to you? Like you just mentioned feeling it coming on to a degree. What are you feeling?
normally for me, it's like an adrenaline. Like I literally feel it in my guts first. And the only reason I really connected with that is because someone told me this years ago and it just stuck. And they said, anytime you have a disturbance inside, your immediate action is silence, not to respond to it. It just is, it's fine, but don't react to what's that bringing up to you. What can that bring up in you? It can bring up frustration. It can come in the form of frustration. So, anger starts with something first, and so I was trying to manage, road rage, like getting angry. Like most vets don't agree. It's like, oh, no, we can dial it up. And that scares everybody around you. And you have to learn that, okay, it's a normal part of brain injury PTSD, but you need to start to work on it. It's a person, you have to work on that. And that's coming from a deep place that you need to go to probably in your psychology, but we're back to try to be as physically healthy as you can so you can go into those sessions. Yeah.
And they feed into each other, right? It's like, if I pretend I'm not having trouble seeing, well, then I'm pretending that I can drive to the grocery store properly.
Right.
And I can pretend that I can get to the end of that report review, but I can't. So now I'm running out of time. So now I'm frustrated because my timings are off. Things are delayed. And all of that, in a lot of ways, probably because I ignored an indicator a little while ago. But that's me talking about how I go through it. What do you see when people are in your life? Because that's why you're at this table, is you live with people that deal with these things? What does it look like when you're not in that body, but you're watching that happen around you?
Well, it's curious because I was thinking, like, what's going on for you folks? Like, Ryan and Brian, as you both were chatting, I'm like, there's people around you while you're going through that. Like, while you're driving to the grocery store, while you're doing those reports, whether it's your coworkers, your families, there's people around you. And so I can speak for myself primarily, but a lot of other family members I talk to at the beginning, if you guys aren't communicating to that to us, we're taking it personally. We're taking it that you're disinterested, that you're mad at us, that the relationship isn't going well. I think many family members, unfortunately, and I think children too, maybe even more so, internalize things. And it's because we didn't clean our room properly, or we disappointed them on a report card, or as spouses, like I said, it must be a reflection of the relationship, or they're pissed off at me. Or, if you're distracted because you're trying to manage those other things and you forgot something that was important to me. Okay. So I'm not important to you, that kind of thing. So, yeah. And what we're observing is it's hard to interpret someone's body language. It can be interpreted so many different ways. So it could be that you're just withdrawing and trying to manage stuff, or I could be interpreting that as you're pissed off at me. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on for the people around.
Yeah. It's such a challenge too, because one of the ways I have been coached to, handle some of the stressors in life is to write lists. Well, what happens when you can't read them? Right. So that might be where the lowering the bar has to happen in my life, is like, well, maybe today's not the day to repair the deck and go buy all these things from Home Depot.
There's a weightlifting book I read years ago, and it said, look, if your elbow's sore, it's the best advice I could give, and it's the least followed. If you're doing an exercise and it hurts your elbow, stop doing it. Right? and how many of us just push through that? Like you said, there's that initial pain that we don't but the fact that we're talking about it allows you to recognize it. So there you go. Back to, this is part of having PTSD and these types of feelings. I think this is where that comes from, and very difficult for me at a point in time in my life to express that to anyone. I was ashamed of it, but now, like I said, I've gone back and dealt with some of those things. I'm not ashamed to say it just doesn't exist anymore, right? And we're talking about the caregiver, the importance of the caregiver, which is often overlooked. And I think there's two things I just want to say quickly. I think, one thing that the Concussion Legacy Foundation does very well is they have peer meetings for caregivers. They're starting that, and we're starting right, because it's like you're all dealing with very similar things. We like to see the support line opened up to caregivers, because, and we can talk about that after, to get people, help for brain injury. But it's an administrative function. The person with brain injury probably can't do it all, so that's why it's like the caregiver is going to have to do that, is that, that administrative function is important. So, and that peer group, I think, for the veteran is important, because folks like, who are veterans can provide that safe space where they can come and just talk and not, yeah.
Well, because I imagine there's a lot to process there, and I'm going to ask Ryan something that I've observed too. You're saying there's kind of shame there. You're ashamed to talk about it. And
yeah.
When it comes to the point that you can't remember, Brian, you walked into the session, you almost forgot your room key. Like that, there's that internal, there's a lot to process there that each of you probably manage.
Thanks for reminding me.
There you go. Short-term memory loss. I'm there to help you out, buddy. But yeah, the fact that you managed troops and that you were in control of things that were critical and like matters of life and death. And that might sound dramatic, but it's true. So knowing that you came from that position, that you commanded troops and were so responsible to the point that you can't even remember 3 things on a grocery list, that must be frustrating. That must cause like internal, like, yeah. And do you get angry at yourself for that? I guess part 2.
Well, I think, one of the things people often talk about body image and what they see when they're looking back, what I see is a loss of capability. And that bothers me more. It's like, yeah, okay, who wouldn't want to be younger and fitter? But what I'm more bothered by is actually related to what you just said. Like when I've got to get a 16-year-old to help me mount a TV bracket, it's like, well, I used to be the one showing you how to use the tools. And then you come to the mental health side of things, like, should I be confused by grade 8 math? No, but I can't help my kids in the last couple of years with it. And not just because it's changed, I've changed, right? And it's those things. Yeah, I relate very strongly to what you just said. Is like that was actually one of the hardest parts of the whole brain health, mental health transition issue for me was, how am I struggling to read a map? I used to make maps out of dirt and string. Like these were capabilities that I just pulled off the tips of my fingers. And I have had to learn to give myself a break. But it is a constant struggle. And then you add into that, as soon as you kind of get used to it, then you age, right? Because these things that happen to me, I'm not 34 anymore. At 47, where does the injury take over? Or where is that just Brian forgetting stuff? But this is all part of it. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, and I'm really going to go after the football player here, but compared to the other things, is the concept of squaring up. So when we are about to shoot, we try and get our feet as close to parallel to a target as you can. Obviously, it has to be offset. When you're pugil fighting, you don't turn like William Tell shooting a bow and arrow to the side. You actually put your senses and your capabilities towards the problem. And a football player squares up to tackle. Is it harder when you get hit from the side? Do you get hurt more in your football experience when you don't see that hit coming?
Oh, yeah. 100% of the time. You're not ready for it. Yeah. That's why.
Do you think you get injured more, though?
I think you're more relaxed in some cases. I mean, it's a double whammy. And the good thing that there's a rule change, because you used to be able to just drive your forehead into someone's ear hole, and the chances are it was a double whammy because you drove your forehead into their ear hole. They got it, you smashed your head too. It's not just, it's not just that person that's getting the energy. It's both of you. Then when they hit the ground, maybe they smack their head on the ground. So that's not good sportsmanship. That's just, so I think with the rule change, look at it. It's like, it's like you go into the military, you're not going to prevent it's not going to stop. It's like football. It's not going to stop. That's the sport. There's a good chance, but just by changing the rules and adjusting it more so in practice, okay? Because it was happening more in practice than it was in games, which doesn't make sense. That's where the military I believe they're making changes in that, which I've seen them react to very quickly. Like, I mean, as an NCO, and this is a message directly to combat arms NCOs, you are exposed to a lot of blast signatures, because not only are you the subject matter experts for the weapons, you're the ARSOs. So you have to throw a lot of rounds downrange to learn how to use the weapon. Then you have to show some dude that's not as good as you how to shoot the weapon, and that just keeps going all the way up to warrant officer. Then you are a little less exposed, but you've got all that exposure the whole time.
And so what Ryan's getting at here is, take the circumstance where you might get 2 rounds a year of an anti-armor weapon. And so you've trained and you've practiced on things that aren't an actual live munition, dummy rounds as they're called. But when you get up there, you're going to shoot those, and it's like being hit with a 500-pound pillow. Like snot comes out of your nose, your teeth can hurt. How about the safety staff? How about the range staff? How about the assistant range safety officers that are around for everybody's 2 rounds, right? So you get your 2, I get my 2, but that guy, if we're not watching, could be exposed to hundreds in that day. Now, the forces doesn't do that.
No.
Right? It certainly has these limits that has put them in, and they've actually got more stringent as the forces has learned more.
No.
But at the end of the day, it's not just what you pulled the trigger on, it's what was pulled around you.
Right. So there's 2 separate stories from NCOs that didn't serve with each other, and they were basically identical. They were ARSOs on an 84 range, and at the end of the day, both of their noses just started gushing with blood. what is, I don't know. I'm not going to diagnose it. I'm just saying
It happens.
there's that's part of there's something happening in the head. And to see, and that's not accusing anyone of anything. You don't know you don't know to change a problem if you don't know what the problem is. Right. So I've seen that. I think that's changed recently. I think that those two stories are from, 10 years ago when, hey, let's face it, we're ramping up for Afghanistan. Like you said, this is the challenge. This is the other challenge when it's kind of feast and famine. The military gets built up and it gets torn down. And then all of a sudden, there's a task coming up and the military gets built back up like Afghanistan. And now you gotta promote people. You've got, now the ball is rolling, right? And you only have so much time. Yeah.
Just like you said in the football analogy, that's the game, right? That's how the game is played. And I've had many people come up to me, whether it's doctors, sometimes spouses, and say like, why does the Army do this? And what I'll tell them is, if you love this person, you don't want them in an army that doesn't practice, doesn't train,
right,
and things are fake all the time. In fact, when you go and do the business, the only thing that should be new is that the other guy means it.
Yeah.
Everything else, you should have had that helmet, that sound, that noise, that exposure, that experience. And so that's the game. The military, I'm telling you, as far as I can prove and see, is doing the best it can. But, tight G turns are tight G turns. Mm-hmm. And that pilot is still going to go through that. The sailors are still going to be up and down, topsy-turvy for 6 months at a time, and we're still going to be knocked around by things.
Yeah.
So we have to, yes, mitigate where we can, but develop the system that catches people, and we have to be more aware of the injury to the brain.
Yeah, and to fall back on what Laryssa was saying about, what's it like to leave that space, and it's like, it's hard, it's hard when you're because when we were in the military, it was really important. Everything we were doing, it was really important. Like when you're talking about, I can't read a map anymore.
I miss that.
But when you're in the military, that you're reading that map, knowing that, okay, I might not have GPS. I know I have to know how to navigate with a map and compass. You have that pressure on you, Then you leave and it's like, you want to relax that a little bit. Maybe you don't have that, but I think that is an understanding that everybody has to have. You're leaving a family. That's why these challenges a lot of times come up in transition. I think transition is important. It's nice to see transition involved because guess who's dealing with that head on? The caregivers, right? Yeah.
I'm going to change gears a little bit, but it's kind of about transition or change.
Yeah.
Is there a different, better version of Ryan Carey post-concussion than would have been without it? Like, is there something different or something you're experiencing now that you wouldn't have, I'm going to say the opportunity? Has this journey led you somewhere that you've had opportunities that you don't think that you would have had beforehand? And that might seem like a really odd question, but I'm curious to know.
He's pensive.
I think a few things happened. First of all, I took a good look inside and said, okay, what am I bringing to the party here? Like, I'm divorced. I have 3 kids. How am I going to be the best ex-husband and the best dad I can be? How can I do that? Right. And so really approaching my life from that family perspective, and getting my days back in order. I felt like I just lost my discipline. No, maybe I needed that. Maybe I needed to sit, be less active for a while. But I can tell you, when I started making those physical changes and I started to take responsibility, not only for my own actions, but for my own health, I really started to grow as a person. And it was around that time I recognized that I think I need to be a little more social. And at that time, I was like, I'm going to go and play music at an open mic. That's my goal.
Right.
Well, I played in a Grey Cup in front of 90,000. I don't know how many. It was in Edmonton. I've been in the military. I'm not really afraid of a lot. Like public speaking, no problem. It took me a year. So my point is, all of us have, if you want to do something that's hard in life, you're gonna struggle. It's gonna be a struggle. right? It's going to be a struggle. And so sometimes when we're talking about like exercise, someone not exercising, well, that's their struggle. You know, how do you get to that? Well, that's what we're all trying to figure out, right?
Part of the reason for my like weirdly phrased question was wondering if your injury led you to music, you know, like would Ryan Carey without your experiences, you know, necessarily have gone down that path? That's what I was curious about.
It's a beautiful question because I literally grew up and got a PhD in music because my dad was so musical.
Oh,
so I literally listened to gospel, bluegrass, country, everything, like everything.
Your whole life. Okay.
Then I, so it was all, music was always there for me as a therapy. I always went to it because I had a feeling, and then I was a good drummer. So I had really good rhythm. I thought, when I got back from Afghanistan, I had a bass guitar and I'm like, no, I'm going to start learning how to play the acoustic. So I just started teaching myself how to play the acoustic, eventually took some courses at Berkeley. And then in 2018, I saw that photo and I really started writing a lot of songs at that point. Yeah.
You know, when she asked that question, one thing that stood out to me was, is your coaching all about like slant routes and coverages, or is it because you want to protect these kids?
I told these kids two things. I said, don't you ever let me hear you saying something bad about yourself. First of all, you're all perfect. You're all wonderful young men. You're nice. You're kind. You're gentle. You drop a pass. It doesn't make you a horrible person. So stop saying, oh, I'm such a loser. Like, don't you ever let me. So their psychology is so important, you know? They need sometimes to tough love because they're young boys, but not obviously something that's physical, right? They like to, hey, put your arm around them. Wait a second. How are you today? You seem like you're a bit sluggish. No, I'm good, coach. I'm good. Okay. Then coach, they make it playful. I make coaching playful. And at times when they need to learn a point, hey, I pull on my stuff that I learned in the military about standing in front of a crowd and getting their attention, right? In a professional manner. And so I use all of that. And I teach them that actually using your head too much is a bad tackling technique, first of all. And second of all, it'll worsen your performance. Okay. We want the football. When we're on offense, we want to score. When we're on defense, we want to take the football from the defender. So I don't teach them to hit hard. I teach them to first person wraps up, second person takes the ball. I don't care how hard you hit him. Just get a hold of him and wrap him up. Because if we take the ball out of his hand, that's our job on defense. So a bit of a cultural shift, whereas before it's like, no. You take that and you drive that thing right into his, you try to hurt him, you know? And that's just that's not sportsmanlike. Why would you want to do that? You know, it's not war. It's just a sport. Yeah.
So as we wind up here, you know, I'm hoping that one of our main efforts today is that we leave people with your understanding and your explanation of those pillars of brain health. So what are they? Because, you know, when people think about the brain, it's complicated. There's many parts of the brain. I would have expected this list to have like 105 things on it.
Yeah.
What are the pillars of brain health as the patient, as the vet, the guy dealing with this?
As the patient, so self-managed care. So exercise, nutrition, sleep, cognitive reserve. They each involve various levels. Exercise, something as simple as walking. Nutrition, nobody agrees on what to eat. So just eat whole foods and make sure you're hydrated. Right? Like, of course, there's things for brain health. You should certain amount of protein. Like, there's lots of information out there on that. And I don't subscribe to the cult of nutrition. Most people are under eating. So have a good look at your nutrition and try to eat whole foods as much as you can. And 90% of the time, 10% of the time, live your life, have a drink, have some pizza, right? Like, sleep, you know, really all you can focus on in a peer role is sleep hygiene. How are you going into sleep? And cognitive reserve is a whole list of things, being social, having a task and a purpose in life, you know, and on top of, doing some stuff for your brain health. For me, it's music. This hand has to do this. My left hand, right hand are doing different things. Sing, play harmonica. To coordinate all that is just good for the brain, and I don't have to think about it too much. So there you go. So those 4 things, get those into your life.
I think that's an important message for folks too. It's like, yeah, absolutely see your doctor and, talk to the people around you, which is something I didn't do enough of.
Yeah.
Let people know that you've lowered the bar today and they might have to give you some space.
Yeah.
But I do really appreciate that idea of there are things in my wheelhouse. There are things that I can do. And are some things that I've got some ownership on. And quite frankly, if I'm wondering why I'm not getting better while I'm not exercising, eating garbage, and doom scrolling all night, well, I've got 3 answers right there as to why I probably am not doing the best with the brain I have.
Yeah. And I think it's, we all get there at some points. And I also would say that, yes, most of the time when I'm not feeling good, I find something to do. And sometimes I just empty the bucket. It's okay to relax. It's okay to have that 20-minute nap, it's okay. Sometimes that can make a world of difference as well. So.
Well, thanks for joining us again, Ryan. I learned something every time we have a conversation, let alone even outside of the podcast. So just thank you very much for spending your time with us again. I know we'll be popping some information for people into the links below and stuff. And yeah, good to see you again, Brian.
Good to see you again, buddy. And we saw you just the other day, but safe travels down to Toronto. Thanks for joining us again, Ryan. This has been another episode of Mind Beyond the Mission.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mind Beyond the Mission.
If this conversation resonated with you or helped you in any way, I encourage you to subscribe to Mind Beyond the Mission wherever you listen to your podcasts, so you'll be the first to know when our next episode comes out.
And if you know someone who might relate to what we've shared or could find it helpful, please feel free to send it their way. We're all on the same team.
Plus, we'd love to hear what other topics you'd be interested in us exploring in future episodes. Brian and I have a lot of ideas and subjects we plan to dive into, but you, the listener, have probably experienced or thought of topics that haven't crossed our minds yet.
Please reach out if this is the case. We're on social media at Atlas Veterans CA on most platforms. So please feel free to tweet at us, send us a message, or leave a review on this episode, and let us know what else you'd like to hear us talk about.
Ryan, it's always a pleasure having these important conversations with you. Looking forward to next time.
You bet, Laryssa. Take it easy.